Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Fred and Lou Hartwig family, Peter and Barbara Gattermeyer, the Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John H. Mize, and Bank of America N.A. co-trustees, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight from the left, the right, and the center over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly. Our topics this week: is Troy Schulte serious about tax hikes? How serious is Bob Hamilton about the Senate race? And who is being taken seriously in the presidential campaign? Plus roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmakers segment and take a look at some of the issues under consideration by the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. Joining us for the first time council member Andrea Boo. She was elected last year and is the at-large council member from the 6th District. She lives in Brookside and is a practicing attorney. Andrea Boo, welcome to Ruckus. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with this. What caused you to run for the City Council? Why did you do it?
Well, for so long, I will say I've been on the sidelines of politics and watching from afar, and I decided that it was time to get in the game. I am a practicing attorney, and oftentimes I was hired to represent clients at City Hall, and it was just time to work for the people and do things that would benefit those who either couldn't pay my billable hour, or just to further the goals and the ideas and the needs of everyday people.
So you've been there for a few months. Is it like you thought it would be?
In some ways it is, in some ways it's not. It is very fast-paced in the last 6+ months. We have done a lot of things that I think have benefited, as the mayor said at last night's State of the City address, regular people, and it is very fast-paced, but and having represented clients before the City Council, I knew to some extent what I was getting into, but there are a lot of things that go on day to day that I'm learning, and I knew that there would be a learning curve.
It's a busy week, as you pointed out.
Absolutely.
The mayor gave the State of the City address, and the budget's going to be revealed this week. Without as much detail as the mayor, how would you describe the state of the city, generally speaking?
I think the state of the city is good. We clearly have some issues that we need to address as a city. Violence is a problem. We have some areas of the city that I think have been neglected. But I think in this budget, which I have not seen the full budget yet, I suspect it will be on my desk when I arrive at City Hall today. But I think this budget will focus on some of the areas of the city that have been neglected, specifically neighborhoods, addressing the violent crime issue, and basic services. Not that we've neglected necessarily basic services, but refocusing the city's priorities on those issues.
Well, I saw a TV newscast, I think it was last week, giving you credit for taking action to deal with potholes and maybe the creation of a pothole czar.
Well, I will give the credit where credit's due on the potholes are. That was the mayor's idea, but I did introduce a resolution last Thursday that was unanimously approved by the council to really take action for the city council to say it is our priority to look at the issues of how we address potholes, not only on a short-term basis, but a long-term basis. And with that comes looking at how we look at infrastructure in our city and street maintenance on a long-term basis.
We don't have a lot of time, so let me ask you for quick reactions to some of the areas the council's dealing with. Free buses.
Yes.
Do we need them? Well, I know we need buses, but do they need to be free?
Free buses can help those who $1.25 will benefit them long-term. Over the course of a year, putting that back into their pockets that they can use for rent, medical expenses. So yes, I think that will be life-changing for some of our population that use buses as their means of transportation.
Do we need more streetcars?
I think streetcars, the expansion to UMKC can be transformative to our students and to those who don't rely on automobiles.
Yeah.
So I think it is important because I think that the starter line served a purpose, but this serves an additional purpose to our students.
You voted to put the tax increase, the sales tax increase for the fire department.
Yes.
Is there a limit to how much sales tax Kansas City can impose?
Yes, I think there is a limit. There will be a limit. I voted for that because I think it's up to the citizens to decide. Clearly, the fire department has some needs, and for me, I thought it was something that we needed to let the voters decide.
Councilwoman, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for coming in. Come back and see us.
All right, I sure will. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That is Kansas City, Missouri Councilmember Andrea Boo. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Laura Isabel Alvarez is a consultant and community activist. Ron Freeman's a motivational speaker and writer. Mary O'Halloran is a media and communications consultant, and Woody Kozad runs the Kozad Company, a government relations firm. I see that Mary, Woody, and I responded positively to the wardrobe email this morning. Some of you did not. Welcome anyway to all of you, however you're attired. There are those who think that Troy Schulte can solve the convoluted and complex problems facing Jackson County government. And they are probably right, but they may not like the new county administrator's solutions. While the battle over last year's unusually steep property taxes continue, Schulte anticipates tax increases for the next cycle in 2021 and probably beyond. He points to certain areas where increases are virtually guaranteed. They include Brookside, Waldo, South Kansas City, Martin City, 95th and State Line, Ward Parkway, Lake Tapawingo, and the 4963 neighborhood. Now, this is not exactly the news Jackson Countyans were hoping for. So how are they reacting? We'll start with Laura.
You know, it is a lot of heartache, a lot of tomorrow's Valentine's, and everyone's heart is breaking over this. It is something that many question, why should the people have to pay for ignorance of government and their process, and government and their funding in what they need to be able to be fair in this process. So it's not looking good.
Do you think Schulte made the right move by announcing these probable tax increases this early?
I appreciate the heads up, but what a lot of, especially homeowners in that area are saying is that now they're going to have to sell their houses to avoid. And if the goal was avoidance, yes, he did. If the goal was to keep people and have them prepare, that's not enough time.
So, Ron, why have taxes risen in Jackson County? Why were they lower previously? Was that a political move by previous administrations?
I think without question, I think it's a reflection. A lot of the protests by the legislators are, matter of fact, their lights being shined on their work. It's a result of, decades of decisions in Jackson County that now we're having the chickens have come home to roost. But I think it's a good move by Schulte to be out front. Here's what's going to go on. And it's bad. It's not going to be good for a while. But I understand here's what's going to go on. Yeah, it's going to at first response immediately. But over time, they're going to learn to trust that this guy's going to do the right thing in leadership.
Mary, at the same time, they're announcing tax increases. Schulte's also announcing pay increases for a number of Jackson County employees. And that's been talked about by Schulte and others for a long time.
That'll balance things out a little bit more. Happy people. Well, I had a chance to review that package of they changed the whole system. It's not just, and they've put in a minimum wage, average increase of about 15%, and apparently an extremely good contractor that did all this, and it's about ready to go into effect. So people will be pleased with that because that's a professional job and done well. I just wanted to mention something about Schulte. One of the big problems with taxation in Jackson County is they don't communicate with the public well. My gosh, the reason why their tax increases skyrocketed is the marketplace. All over the city, there is new development, luxury lofts and so on, but there was no system to fairly incorporate it. One of the most wonderful things about Kansas City real estate is there'll be great blocks of beautiful homes and then middle-class homes and then an occasional apartment. That was a charming part of the city, but gentrification is not going in the direction of maintaining that.
You know, Woody, in addition to these other problems, they're talking about computer problems and the need for a whole new computer system, which if they get, won't have people who will know how to operate it.
Well, the only excuse for raising salaries for public employees is that you can't hire the right people at the salaries you're now paying. And so if they're having difficulty hiring in certain areas, that's where the pay increases should go. If you get plenty of people every time you advertise a job applying for the job, why are you spending the taxpayers' money to attract people you're already attracting? I'm sure they've got some categories, almost all governments do, where they're underpaying the marketplace and they've got to do something about it. All I know is a couple of decades ago, the federal court took over that medieval shed we call a jail in this county, and we were overcrowding in a way that would have disgraced the city jail in Tijuana, Mexico. And
you know that from personal experience.
Yeah, I've heard. And so we still got the same jail. And everybody knows we need a new jail, and those guys won't build it. And if I were a taxpayer in Jackson County, until I saw them doing something about that, we're turning people loose while witnesses to murders are being gunned down.
Here's another problem, Ron. There are people who are appealing their property tax, and they got a lower assessment approved.
Right.
They're not getting the money because Jackson County can't function properly and send them the refund.
Yeah. Well, it's a problem in the system. You've got people who set a structure in place. First of all, you overtax people, and that's probably going to be worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million when you look at the overall, what's going to be recovered by people going through this process, and that's my math. You'll have to look at the numbers later. But the reality is that this is a problem created by the legislature, and now people are suffering for it, and we've got to make it.
Let me do a final quick question for everybody, and just a quick answer by everybody.
Yeah.
Are these problems in Jackson County beyond solution?
No.
Ron?
No.
Never.
Woody?
No.
Okay. The answer is no. The name Hamilton is important in American politics. Alexander Hamilton is the subject of many books and at least one Broadway musical. He co-authored the Federalist Papers and served as the nation's first Secretary of the Treasury. But enough about Alex. How about Bob Hamilton of Bob Hamilton Plumbing, Heating, and AC? The Johnson County businessman, known to many through his TV and radio commercials, Better Call Bob, is said to be considering a run for the U.S. Senate to succeed Pat Roberts. It's believed he could fund his own campaign and may be talking with Jeff Rowe, the former Kansas Citian who managed the Ted Cruz presidential campaign. Hamilton would join the Republican field, which is already crowded. So, Woody, do you see any precedent for a businessman making a successful first run for office against seasoned political veterans?
I hear a rumor that may have happened before. Bob Hamilton Plumbing, Heating, and AC, dial 888 for BOB. Remember the 913. Everybody in the metro area can recite that. Now, how do you turn that into an asset in a political race? And I think the answer is, if you look at the field, you got Ms. Wagle from Wichita, which is her base. You've got Congressman Marshall from the western part of the state, which is his base. And then Chris Kobach, who has kind of an archipelago of support.
Who has no base.
Well, no, he
Some
does.
people think. But
he does have a base, actually, and it's very loyal to him.
Yes.
So now, if you're Hamilton, what do you do? Well, first of all, obviously, you try to be the #1 guy in the metro area. And then you try to be everybody else's second choice, so that when the polling numbers go south for some candidates and some people get discouraged, they come to you. And I think the way you do that, you go first at Kobach and you say, I'm the conservative who can actually win. And that's your first step. And then you just try and run a good campaign in Marshall's area and Wagle's area and be their #2 choice and carry Joko and Wyandotte County.
So it's not an impossibility. He could enter and win.
Not at all.
And if he has Jeff Rowe working on his behalf, that's a real asset.
Yes, it is. Jeff, don't remember something. Ted Cruz was the last guy standing against Trump.
Almost won, yeah.
And that was quite a feat.
I want to ask a question directed to Ron and Mary because both of you have run for political office.
Yes.
Mary succeeded, but
Yeah,
in
no,
any
you raise
case,
that
I'll
every
ask
time.
both of you.
That's true.
Yeah.
Quick, tell me this. What should a first-time candidate running for office be expecting that may not be expected, may surprise him?
Well, I think the name ID factor. I mean, credibility is a tough thing to get in that process, as I learned the hard way. Mary obviously learned it the easy way. But you got to get your name out there, and I think that's where it's going to be expensive for him to do that. If he brings enough resources to the table, and he's got to bring his own resources, I don't think traditionally he's going to be able to raise some money that say.
I think he's supposed to be able to fund his own campaign.
So, but it's going to cost him money to get.
But
this
what about
done.
privacy?
Oh, there is no privacy. And the truth goes out the window too. People can say whatever they want to about you, and that's one of the realities of politics. And I think that's why a lot of good people weigh whether or not to jump in. And we've seen what's happened to President Trump over the last 3 years. And now you're looking. I think you jump in that race. Who knows? I mean, maybe he's got no skeletons.
So,
maybe it's
Mary,
like
you
Woody.
ran successfully for the Iowa legislature
I did, 3 times.
Back when the Democratic Party could conduct caucuses that worked.
I was actually on the floor of the House when the caucus bill was designed. My good friend, a good friend of mine.
So you're to blame.
Not me personally. I voted for it though. Yes, there's 5 of us said, oh, why don't we put this in February?
Back to today's
bingo.
discussion.
Worked fine until now, Mary.
What
Worked fine
would a
until now.
first-term candidate expect, someone who's never run for office, that might shock him or her?
About how shocking everything is and how tough it is and how you got to have your inner life together. I would give free advice, sir. This
Worth
is free
every penny.
advice, worth every penny. Get your own inner attitude toward what you're doing together. It's about the medium, the message, and the messenger. And you have to understand exactly why you're doing this thing and why you're running and what your passion is about this. And then put it in the form of a message and deliver it every way you can. And if you are not totally at home, you'll wither under the criticism. I ran in a race where Republicans there had never been a Democrat, one back in the previous century. And the Republican was a pillar of the community, was so insulted by having to run against a Democratic woman that I never met him. I never met him during the whole race. So you got to be prepared for tough stuff.
Laura, very quickly, final question. The Democratic nominee presumptive for the U.S. Senate from Kansas, Barbara Bollier, is raising a lot of money, over $1 million, setting a record. Why do you think that's happening?
I'm going to say something kind of epic. The Latinx community in Kansas is rapidly growing and rapidly getting politically active. And she's actually listening to the Latinx community. I'm not going to say that
what community?
The Latinx community.
Oh, Latinx. People who are formerly Latin?
No, we are offended because the Spanish language contains gendered nouns.
We're not offended. We're just inclusive. We don't make you choose what identity
Latino,
you want to
Latina.
have. We're
There we go.
inclusive.
So
to
that's why
all.
she's taking in lots of money?
No, I think that's helping her
Okay.
raise some money because she's into networks that maybe in politics we haven't made space for.
The reason she's raising money is she's very good at
And
it.
she's the only candidate in the race,
and
except
Barbara,
one other, I
Dr.
guess.
Bollier, let's
Yeah.
give her
Yeah.
her proper
Well, and
title.
Laura Kelly's won
and
2 years
Senator
ago.
Bollier is an extraordinary woman, and
Yeah.
she is. I've never met anyone who doesn't respect
she's-
her and like her.
She's raising money
She's a
from
great
her.
listener.
She's a
Raising
great
money
listener.
from her neighbors in Mission Hills.
She has
Yes.
this
All right,
little,
we got to
There
go
you
on.
little message.
We got to go on. We're out of
Let's
time for
go
that
on.
segment. In the race for the Democratic presidential nomination, some analysts think it's coming down to the 3 Bs: Buttigieg, Bernie, and Biden, with growing doubt about Biden. Some think a 4th B, Bloomberg, will emerge as a top-notch contender after Super Tuesday, when his name will be on the ballot for the first time. As a result of this week's New Hampshire primary, Senator Amy Klobuchar is getting a lot of traction, coming in 3rd behind Bernie and Buttigieg. Some observers think by convention time, the race will be so divided that Democrats won't know for certain who their nominee will be. Now, all of us have watched Democratic presidential campaigns over the years. How do you see this one playing out, Mary?
Well, I think you have somebody in the 3 Bs that you gave there that needs to be maybe stricken. I'll just give you what I think is going to happen.
Biden?
Well, yes. And it's extraordinary that the man who's running first, or was running until a couple of days ago, first in the nationwide polling, would come in fourth in Iowa, and fifth
in New Hampshire.
And that just doesn't, that's not normal. Plus, the last thing I saw last night was he's down 22 points in the national polls.
Burisma,
and
just saying.
and Mr.
Yeah.
Well, there are a number of things.
So how's this campaign going to play out? Who do you see emerging?
Well, I first of all bear in mind that this is the beginning, and the 90% of the delegates have yet to
Bear
be
in mind we
chosen.
only have 3 minutes, so.
Bear in mind,
obviously-
well, I think you've got a great Democratic inclusive battle going on. We have the gay man soldier from Indiana. We have the 2 strong women, and Amy Klobuchar, who knew? Well, I did, because I followed her
Best in the
career
field.
for a
Best in the
course.
field. That's the best in the field right there.
and Bernie is surging with his, quote, movement now, the leadership of the
How about
Democratic.
Bloomberg? Is he going to emerge?
Well, I certainly hope so. I am so.
You prefer Bloomberg over some of these
I
others?
haven't no. This is our time for a woman president, if there ever
So
was
Klobuchar,
So
is that the
Klobuchar's
You know
one.
why?
Is that who you want
Or
to be
Beth.
the nominee?
Could be Beth.
54% of the
That's
voters
another
are women,
B.
and women are really
okay.
intent.
Ron-
But yes, I like Bloomberg.
Ron,
Yes,
how
I
do you see the Democratic campaign playing out?
You know, I think it's interesting. Klobuchar would be the one I would think would be most likely, but because they're Democrats, she doesn't have a chance. I think it's probably going to come down to probably, it looks like Bernie Sanders, quite honestly. And I think that's, to me, it's when you have a platform, a socialist platform, you have what's going on in the House of Representatives with the socialist movement within the young, what do you call the squad that they have going there. That seems to be where the party's headed, which again, this country, I don't think they're going to do very well in the general election.
All right, Laura, regardless of who the Democratic nominee is, what will be his or her best argument against re-electing President Trump?
I don't think they should have
want me to
an
start over?
argument. No, I don't think it's about an argument about why not re-electing Trump for Democrats. I think a lot of Democrats can come up with that list themselves. I think the winning anecdote's going to be based on what they bring in as a promise and what they've already displayed.
Woody, what would be the president's best argument for being re-elected?
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I got to give the Democrats credit, first of all. You have to learn from your past mistakes. In 2016, they nominated Hillary on the theory that boredom was the road to victory. And this year, they've wheeled out the clown car, and nobody is bored by what's going on. So I'm enjoying it a lot. I do think Ms. Boyer moved to the Democratic Party in the name of moderation and now finds herself in a party where Bernie Sanders is probably the leading candidate. And if that's your idea of moderation, she made the right move. I'm with Ron. I think that's tough to sell in November.
Still, though, Woody, the moderate Democrats are in the majority still in the voting in both states. Well, but if you add Klobuchar and Buttigieg together, you get the majority.
A lot depends on your definition of moderate, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, let's go
that's
to
probably
the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckheads have 30 seconds each to cheer, sneer, or leer. And we begin with Woody.
There's more talk about so-called local control of the Kansas City Police Department. I want to congratulate the Police Commission and the state of Missouri for the system we've had here for many, many decades. We've had a mostly, as far as I can remember in my lifetime, scandal-free police department, which a lot of cities cannot say. They're doing a respectable job in a very difficult situation right now, and the thing for City Hall to do is leave them alone.
Laura?
I want to shout out to every person of color who has ran for office or is thinking about running for office. In this country, you don't have representation yet, and representation matters. So kudos to you and hoorah.
All right, Mary.
Well, I'd like to toast a really remarkable woman who did something very courageous this week. Her name is Amanda Kaufman, and she's a teacher who resigned in public and gave one of the most moving speeches about why, after the very disappointing behavior of the Shawnee Mission School District Board. They've passed for the first time, voted on a 3-year contract that was unilateral. The teachers were aghast and shocked by their actions, and 42% of the teachers under this will have fewer dollars in pay and no attention to their main concerns. She delivered a speech that has been now gone viral. 500,000 people have seen it so far.
All right, Ron.
Good work.
I like the toast Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, recently released Created Equal. Clarence Thomas's own words, and it's about his upbringing, his struggle, and the ground he took back in 1991 through his confirmation hearing and the taxing on his life personally, and the convictions he learned growing up in Georgia in poverty, raised by his grandparents. Just an amazing story. It's going to be at AMC Theaters for a while. It's also going to be on KCPT later this year.
All right, and finally, I saw this on Facebook the other day, thought I would share it with you. Democrats are requesting $50 million for security at the upcoming nominating convention. The writer wonders, why not just hold the event in a gun-free zone? And that's Ruckus for this week. We are back next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching, happy Valentine's weekend, and good night.